All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Islam, and I am the director of the Vincent Chin 40th Remembrance and Rededication, which will be held next month right here in Detroit, June 16th through June 19th. With nationwide attention on Asian American hate incidents, we are reminded of Vincent Chin's brutal 1982 murder and miscarriage of justice that followed. We cannot talk about hate crimes and senseless killings today without talking about Vincent Chin. Today we remember Vincent Chin and rededicate ourselves to stand in solidarity against racism, discrimination, and I am proud to be one of the torchbearers of his legacy in this continued fight for justice and racial equality. As we stand here today on Peterborough Street in historic Chinatown at the start of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we reflect on our history and we are humbled by the sacrifices all of whom made before us. We are also mindful of how much more we must do to achieve a truly equal, inclusive, and safe world for everyone. Thankfully, there are many leaders doing just that, and I am pleased to introduce a few of them here today. I would like to welcome members of our Vincent Chin 40th Planning Committee, some whom you will hear from in a few moments. Please welcome James Shimura, our Planning Committee Chair. Roland Wong, Chair of American Citizens for Justice. Helen Zia, author and executor of Vincent and Lily Chin Estate. Don Young from the Center for Asian American Media. And Zozette Gear from DPTV, Detroit Public Television. And I would also like to recognize one of our key advisors to the Planning Committee, Rochelle Riley, Director of Arts and Culture for the City of Detroit's Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship. She has been a great help as we plan our slate of events for the next month. Joining us in the audience are many of our community partners who are helping to continue Vincent Chin's legacy, so please make sure to join us at the end of the program for a group photo. Now, I would like to bring up Helen Zia, representative of the Vincent and Lily Chin family and a founding member of the American Citizens for Justice established in 1983 to seek justice for Vincent Chin. Helen Zia.
Thank you, Rebecca. And it's such an honor to be here with so many distinguished officials, distinguished guests, and members of the media. As the representative of the Vincent and Lily Chin estate, it's really moving to see so much excitement and energy in planning this 40th anniversary. And it's really incredibly an honor to follow Rebecca Islam, who is such an exemplary leader of the next generation here in Detroit. In 1982, the horrific baseball bat killing of Vincent Chin on the eve of his bachelor party and the miscarriage of justice that followed and allowed his two white killers to be freed without spending a single night in jail because the judge then said, these are not the kind of men you send to jail in a city like Detroit. That was the springboard for the modern Asian American civil rights movement. It truly helped build an American civil rights movement that was multiracial, multicultural, united for equal justice and human dignity, and Detroit was its epicenter. Now in 2022, we sadly see so many parallels in our present day fight for justice and equality for all people. We know that Vincent Chin's murder was fueled by anti-Asian hate, and that is what is so rampant today. But Vincent Chin's legacy was so much more than that. It's also a powerful example of how people of color and people of conscience from all walks of life came together in solidarity and unity to build a new civil rights movement that was initiated by Asian Americans, and Detroit was its epicenter. So as we stand here today, now, in Detroit's historic Chinatown, we say firmly, racial violence and hate have no place here. And we thank Mayor Duggan, especially his incomparable Director of Arts and Culture, for all the support we've received in preparing for our 40th commemoration of Remembrance and Rededication for Vincent Chin. And we're standing on Peterborough, which we also thank the mayor that we are planning a street mural right here that we plan to say Vincent Chin was here, because in this Chinatown, Vincent Chin was here. So we invite everyone to join us next month at the Vincent Chin 40th Remembrance and Rededication to learn more and join with us in this ongoing fight for justice. And now I'd like to introduce Jim Shimura, a fellow co-founder for the American Citizens for Justice, with me and Roland Wong back in 1983 when we were a lot younger, to tell you more about the coming event.
Oh, thank you, Helen. And listen, I appreciate all of you coming out today for this event. It's very important to me personally. It's a long, long journey of almost 4 decades. I'm Jim Shimura. I'm one of the co-founders and also the chair of the Vincent Chin 40th Anniversary Committee. We have an impactful and historic schedule of events planned over 4 days, June 16 to 19. And by the way, please visit vincentchin.org for the full schedule. The program includes an Asian American Film Festival, a national dialogue and community conversations on race and equity in 2022, as well as performances by Asian American artists and public art, including a beautiful mural of Vincent Chin, which will be unveiled and displayed here on the wall across from me by the artist Anthony Lee. And Anthony's here. Anthony, give a wave to everyone. And please take a moment. Right over here, you'll see the rendering of what the eventual mural will look like. I know Anthony's been working very diligently. I thank you for taking time on a very short schedule to be able to pull this together for us. Additionally, we have nationally prominent leaders who have joined us as honorary co-chairs. All these individuals are champions for the fight for justice and equality. They include former Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta, Irene Natividad, who's an internationally renowned leader for women's rights, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and actor George Takei, who I'm sure you've heard of, who is well known for his role as playing Sulu in Star Trek. Anytime you plan an event of this stature and scope, it requires support from our elected officials. The June program would not be possible without the support of Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's our honor to have Mayor Duggan as part of today's program. I'd like to ask him to please come up and say a few words. Mayor Duggan.
There are in your life certain events that shape your outlook. And Vincent Chin was beaten to death by 2 white men in June of 1982. What I remember was in March of 1983, when the plea agreement was made in which he was sentenced to probation. And I remember it clearly because I was a month away from graduating law school in the University of Michigan. I'd accepted a job in downtown Detroit. I was headed this way and I was intensely interested. And the first I heard of it, there was a woman by the name of Helen Zia on TV making a very passionate statement. I said, this can't be true. And I got deeply interested, studied the case, saying, how could this happen in my hometown? And the facts were even worse, that when this bar fight happened, both Vincent Chin and his friends and the perpetrators were put out of the bar. Chin went his own way. They hunted him down and beat him with a bat. The kind of case that should have been charged as first-degree murder. In fact, at the preliminary exam, the 36th District Court judge said to the prosecutor, this case should have been charged as first-degree murder. And instead, the prosecutor's office dropped it to manslaughter. But that was only the beginning of the indifference. When the sentencing day came up, nobody from the prosecutor's office bothered to show up. Nor did they bother to advise the Chin family that the sentencing was coming up so the family could speak. Nobody was there but defense attorneys because the system didn't care. And it was a deep lesson to everybody, something that we're still learning to this day, that our criminal justice system behaves differently depending on the color of your skin. I could not have imagined that what would happen after that. The sentence was in March. Bill Cahalan, who had been a prosecutor for 16 years, resigned just a few months later in the fallout. His successor, John O'Hare, was appointed, and 2 years after that, I was working for John O'Hare. And in 2000, I got elected to succeed John O'Hare as the Wayne County prosecutor. I felt connected to this case for a long time. And the first meeting I had with the management team and the new prosecutor, a lot of longtime prosecutors were there. The first thing I said to them is, explain to me how the Vincent Chin case could have happened. And I heard the kind of defensive language you heard. You got to understand, we've got 300 prosecutors, we've got 40,000 felonies a year. There are pleas, you can't keep track of everything. And I said, let me ask you all this. If it had been a 27-year-old white suburbanite who had been beaten to death with a bat by 2 Asian men, do any of you here think you would have not have bothered to go to the hearing and he would have gotten probation? And it was met with dead silence. And I said, I want to have a different standard in this office. I want to make sure that we are charging people. We don't charge somebody more or less because of the color of their skin. And we don't charge somebody more or less because of the color of the skin of the victim. And we're going to put processes in place where we're going to measure our charging patterns, our plea patterns, our sentencing patterns. Because it's the responsibility of the leadership of the office to make sure that the implicit bias that each of us has as an individual doesn't get translated into the criminal justice system. And I'm sure if my successor, Kim Worthy, were here, she would tell you she has continued that practice to this day because she is equally committed to that principle. And there was more reform that came out of the efforts of this group. The law in Michigan now requires that families of victims be entitled to address the court at the time of sentencing. So the kind of thing that happened then could never happen again. You get a chance to have your voice. And so the advocacy group from 40 years ago, I want you to know the impact that you have is resonating today. And we still have a long way to go, as we saw in the case of George Floyd, and have a criminal justice system that treats everybody the same. But we are moving in the right direction, and this group was a big part of it, and I'm really proud to be with you here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Duggan. That is very insightful of you to make those observations with respect to the criminal justice system and how it didn't serve justice in the case of Vincent Chin. I'm Roland Wong, co-founder and president of American Citizens for Justice. We formed ACJ to combat xenophobia and fight for justice for Vincent Chin, and are proud to continue this legacy 40 years later. We are thrilled that many of our Detroit friends and community partners are with us today, some who have been with us for 40 years, and thank you for joining us. It is my pleasure to introduce Michigan State Senator Minority Leader Stephanie Chang, who's also a member of the Asian Pacific American Law Caucus. Senator Chang was the first Asian American woman elected to the state legislature, and he got her start as a community organizer right here in Detroit. Senator Chang.
Thanks so much, Roland, and thanks everyone for being here. Happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I think that it's such an important time every year to really reflect on the important contributions of Asian Americans, yet also so many of the struggles that Asian American community members have faced over the years. So it's an important time for us to relearn some of this history, to teach others about some of this history, and also to think about what are the lessons that we can learn. So I think it's really appropriate that this year we are launching the efforts for the 40th anniversary commemoration and rededication of the murder of Vincent Chin. And I think that, so I was born in 1983, so the year after Vincent Chin was killed. And I know that it wasn't until I was in high school, I'm pretty sure, until high school that I learned about what happened to him. And actually it was through reading Asian American Dreams and through being a part of an Asian American student group at my high school under the mentorship of the only Asian American high school teacher at the time in my school that I really learned so much more about our community's history and learned about what happened to Vincent Chin. And it really, I think, in many ways changed my life in being able to learn more about the struggles that our community has gone through, and really made me feel a strong sense of commitment as someone who really wanted to be part of making change for all of our communities and becoming an organizer and someone who's dedicated her career to social justice and civil rights. So, in thinking about the fact that, it's Asian American Heritage Month, we're here in Detroit about to embark on the 40th anniversary of the killing of Vincent Chin. And still to this day, we're grappling with so many of the same issues. It just really, I think, has to remind us all of how much work there is yet to do. And I'm sure there will be lots of conversation about this in June, but, over the past 2 years, having seen and heard so many people's stories of rising anti-Asian hate in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still here, it's been in many ways disheartening to think about the fact that it's been 40 years and there's still so much more to do, and in many ways we are sort of still where we were. And so I think that these events will provide an important opportunity for us to really reflect on what we need to do moving forward and what the lessons are that we have learned and that we have to continue to learn from all of the amazing activism that started right here in Detroit. I know that Asian American community leaders across the whole country are going to be looking to Detroit this year for what those lessons are. And so we are going to be in that spotlight, and I hope that we, use that as an opportunity to really uplift, what happened to Vincent Chin, but also so much of the multiracial coalition building that happened then and has to continue to happen now if we're going to make the changes that are needed in our justice system and in our world. The last thing I just wanted to say is that, we are also in this time right now where there are so many forces at play that are trying to whitewash the way that we teach our history. And I think that the fact that we've got this 40th anniversary this year of the killing of Vincent Chin is yet another reminder of how important it is that we are teaching every child the history and the true history and the whole history about what happens in our country, for whether it's Asian Americans or the Latino community or the Black community or Indigenous history or Arab and Chaldean history. We need to be teaching our young people about the contributions of people of color in this country, but also the really painful parts of our country's history, because that is the only way that we are going to get better and that we are going to be able to achieve the type of America that my parents came here believing in. So thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to the event in June.
Senator Chang, I'm not even going to get started about how much of a supporter and a role model and a big sister Stephanie is to me, and we're just really glad that we have you, Stephanie, in Lansing representing us, so thank you. So when the planning committee envisioned the 4 days of remembrance and rededication to honor the 40th anniversary of Vincent Chin's murder, we knew the importance of partners and sponsors committed to our values of equity, justice, and racial equality, and understood the significance of this moment in our history with strong ties to Detroit, as you've heard our previous speakers mention. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Wendy Lewis Jackson, Managing Director of the Detroit program at the Kresge Foundation, our presenting sponsor for the Vincent Chin 40th. Wendy Jackson.
Mayor Duggan was right. There are certain cases and events in our country's history that haunt us personally, they haunt us as a community and as a nation. And it's such a pleasure, though, to be here today to commemorate what happened to Vincent Chin and how, as a community, we are going to remember and create new pathways for attacking and addressing justice in our community. So good afternoon. The horrific beating and murder of Vincent Chin in 1982 and the subsequent miscarriage of justice really ignited the modern Asian American civil rights movement and the path that brings us here today. We've come full circle in many ways. And the Kresge Foundation is truly honored to support the Chin family, American Citizens for Justice, Mayor Duggan, the City of Detroit Office of Arts and Culture and Entrepreneurship, Detroit Public Television, and the amazing coalition of national and local groups that have come together to commemorate Asian American and Pacific Islander Month, as well as announce the upcoming plans for the 4-day Vincent Chin 40th Anniversary Remembrance and Rededication in June. You know, the present day wave of anti-Asian hate violence has rekindled awareness of Vincent's legacy and the fact that today's remembrance and rededication is planned amid a climate of anti-Asian hate and violence that harks back to 1982 is significant. We're hopeful that today's commemoration will spark a national conversation on democracy, racial justice, and Asian American culture. Our hope is that these events will engage present as well as future generations in the commitment to social justice and the fight against racism and hate. You know, Detroit has been a major epicenter of the long struggle for a just America for all. And the Kresge Foundation is honored to support this milestone of the Asian American civil rights movement in the aftermath of Vincent Chin's death. We look forward to public education, essential conversations, and rededication to our collective stand against hate and violence. The programming for the next month will examine the impact of Vincent Chin's murder on America, as well as celebrate the deep roots of Asian Americans in Detroit through arts, culture, as well as history. The commemoration will bring together original organizers and activists from the Vincent Chin movement and today's racial and social justice leaders. It's about creating new pathways for a just Detroit. And this is why Vincent Chin's legacy and the subsequent civil rights movement matter today more than ever. Everyone who cares about the promise of America and our increasingly diverse nation must see in this case the possibility of social change arising from tragedy. So thank you very much, and it's again an honor and a pleasure to join you this afternoon.
Thank you, Wendy, and the Kresge Foundation for generosity and the leadership in funding this important series of events. We would also like to recognize the support of the Ford Foundation, Certina Foundation, Henry Luce Foundation, TAF, AARP, Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, Participant Media, MAPEC, Michigan Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission. We are deeply grateful for their support. And before we conclude our program, I would like to invite two members of our planning committee to the podium. Don Young from the Center for Asian American Media and Zozette Gear here from DETV.
Thank you, Rebecca. At Detroit Public TV, we are very privileged and honored to be partners with the Vincent Chin 40th Rededication and Remembrance Planning Committee. In 1987, DETV co-produced the documentary Who Killed Vincent Chin, which chronicles how the case brought the disparate Asian American communities of Detroit together for the first time, and how they transformed themselves from a grassroots advocacy group into a national movement to protest the terrible injustice that followed Vincent's murder. Today, in a time where anti-Asian hate crimes are on the rise, this film seems more relevant than ever. Who Killed Vincent Chin, by filmmakers Christine Choi and Renee Tajima-Pena and executive producer Juanita Anderson, was nominated for an Academy Award in 1989 and earned the prestigious DuPont Columbia Award in 1991. Last year, it was gloriously restored and named to the National Film Registry as one of the most influential American films of all time. At Detroit Public TV, we are proud and thankful that this newly restored national treasure will be shown during the Vincent Chin 40th Remembrance and Rededication events next month in the city of Detroit. Then on Monday, June 20th, the documentary will be broadcast nationally on PBS as part of the POV series, which originally aired the film in 1987. Detroit Public TV is also producing programming that will explore the legacy of Vincent Chin and the fight against Asian hate then in 1982 and today. But our work has just begun. At Detroit Public TV, for the past 2 years, we've convened an advisory group of Asian American leaders who've helped guide us in our coverage of their diverse communities. And we are committed to continue telling the many stories of our local AAPI community as we seek to build together a more just, equitable, and safer place for us all to live in and prosper as Americans. Thank you. Don?
Hi, everybody. I'm Don Young, Director of Programs for the Center for Asian American Media. And I flew in on a red-eye last night from San Francisco, really wanting to be here to really celebrate and bear witness to really the work that you all in Detroit have given really as a gift to the Asian American community. While 40 years ago Vincent was murdered, but you're hearing a story has emerged of an Asian American community that's found its voice here. And I think what we'll be able to build upon in June will be an opportunity to tell a new Asian American story at a time it's needed most. So Cam, we were first associated with the documentary when it premiered in 1987, and that documentary really inspired me personally to do what I do, to tell stories. So over the couple of days in June, we'll be hosting the first ever Asian American Midwest Filmmakers Conference. We'll be screening Who Killed Vincent Chin, the restored version. We'll be screening another film that we'll be announcing shortly. And then also hosting a national conversation about what this moment meant to our community, the Asian American community, but more importantly, what it means to larger America. So all of this is being done in the context of the activities in terms of PBS and public media. But again, I want to come here to just really thank, the city of Detroit, all that you all have done on behalf of the Asian American community. But more importantly, I think June will be an opportunity to really showcase Detroit and what communities can do to build around moments like these and create stronger, better communities together. So thank you.
Thank you, Don and Zozette. As you can see, we have an exciting and thoughtful program lineup for June. And before we conclude, I want to say thank you all for joining us today on this where is it May? Is it February? I don't know. So thank you all for joining us here. And we are happy to take any questions if there are any questions.